Dear friends, welcome to Chicago Jewish Cafe, where we try to talk about important issues affecting our people from within and from without. Today, I want to talk about the fervent Polish denial of its culpability in the murder of its 3 million Jews. America's acting as Polish defense attorney and a grave threat to America, not only to Jews, but to the entire country, that such American immoral position represents. 2 weeks ago, for 2 days, November 19th and 20th, the conference on anti-Semitism after October 7 took place in Warsaw, and the U.S. ambassador to Poland, Tom Rose, a Jew by birth, spoke there. The ambassador condemned the Jews who believed that Poland played a role for murder of Polish Jews. He said that this was a lie that, quote, poisoned relations between Jews and Poles, between Israel and Poland, and between the United States and Poland. Poland, he declared, bears no responsibility for Nazi crimes, and anyone who claims otherwise is spreading a blood libel. In response, the Holocaust Survivors Foundation USA issued the statement that was simple but devastating. These words are deeply offensive, they said. They insult the memory of the hundreds of thousands of Jews murdered by Poles during the Holocaust. The survivors reminded to the ambassador that countless Poles hunted Jews, denounced Jews to Germans, and that even after liberation, returning survivors often had to hide in basements because of Polish anti-Semites and pogroms that took place without Germans. There were righteous Poles, yes, the statement said, but they were small minority. The betrayal of the truth by American ambassador, unfortunately, has been the norm for American representative when it comes to absolving Polish of guilt in anti-Semitism. Let's go back to 1912, the year when Poles began boycotting Jewish-owned stores. The boycott, which long preceded the Nazi boycott in Germany, or American BDS movement against Israel, began after Jewish voters secured the election of a socialist candidate over the Polish right-wing NDEK, National Democratic Party, candidate in the fourth Russian parliamentary elections. A large part of Poland, at that time that part was part of Russian Empire, this Polish boycott of Jews was part of the harsh anti-Semitic atmosphere in Russia as the whole, fueled by horrible anti-Semitic climate in that country, whipped up by the far-right groups like Black Hundreds and supported by Tsar Nicholas II. The ritual murder trial of Mendel Baylis, a Jewish man accused of murdering a Christian boy, was one of the results of that climate. American reaction to what Polish press called at that time Polish-Jewish war was primarily limited to some newspaper coverage and concern among American Jewish organizations. The public at large ignored it. While some Americans sympathized with the plight of European Jews, a significant level of domestic anti-Semitism and isolationist sentiment at that time, like it is today, limited the American public's desire for the U.S. government involvement in the issue. 2 years later, in 1914, this Polish war against its Jewish neighbors turned from economic to bloody. That was the real beginning of the Holocaust, which Jews at that time called in Yiddish Hurbam, the destruction. But in the beginning of the Holocaust, it was not Germans who were killing the Jews. It was Russian army, especially Cossacks of that army, which did it. And they were actively helped by Poles, the neighbors of Jews. Like 2 years previously, America kept its eyes closed to Russian and Polish crimes against the Jewish people. To better see what I mean, let's take a look at the map with which I began my book, Hurbam, The Prelude to the Holocaust. What you see here is the map of pogroms in Poland at the beginning of World War I, the Great War, as some people call it. As you see it here, there are no pogroms in German-occupied territory. Not a single one. The left portion of the map. All pogroms occurred only in areas controlled by the retreating Russian army. As I said already, this is the real beginning of the Holocaust. It is so because World War II was simply the continuation of the unfinished World War I. And mass expulsions of Jews, as well as large-scale murders by army, by soldiers, were done not by Germans, but by the Russians in that army, who were assisted by Poles. The Holocaust did not begin on September 1, 1939, with German invasion of Poland. No, it began June 22nd, 1941, with German invasion of the Soviet Union. It began on August 1st, 1914, the day when the so-called Great War began. That year, August 1st, was Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, the darkest day in Jewish history and on the Hebrew calendar. During the Russian army retreat before the advancing Germans, the army, thoroughly infected by the Jew hatred, despite 500,000 Russian Jews serving in its ranks, blamed Jews for its defeats, accusing them of treason, of helping Germans, and engaging in the most vile acts of the sabotage. Russians expelled hundreds of thousands of Jews from Kalisz, Lomza, Suwałki, Białystok, and other Polish cities and towns. Soldiers looted shops, burned synagogues, raped Jewish women, and murdered Jews at will. Huge numbers of local Poles joined in, helping in this mayhem and grabbing Jewish property even before the flames cooled. In Russia, with its total censorship of newspapers, nobody could publish news about it, although the information did get through to a number of members of Russian parliament. That's how we know some of the information that I'm using here. In France, Russia's ally, the police came to anyone who intended to publish any letters from Russian about it and threatened them with expulsion from the country. In England, another Russian ally, the government convinced the Jewish leaders there to refrain from publicizing this news, and to their horrible shame, these Jewish leaders followed the government's advice. The news of massive Russian army pogroms, however, did reach America and were published in New York's Yiddish press, producing large-scale protests. However, following the advice of American ambassador to Russia at that time and his friends in Washington and University of Chicago, the English language press refused to publish this news. Besides general anti-Semitism, the other reasons for American lack of sympathy were just like today. The Polish-American community, already millions strong at that time, demanded the protection of Poland's good name, and American Catholic leaders joined them in defense of the honor of Polish Catholics. When Jewish voices cried out, America tried to silence them. There was always a good excuse. Either it did not really happen, or the Poles are the victims, or later it is the Bolsheviks, and later yet it is the Germans. Even when Poles were literally smashing windows and dragging Jews into the streets, America found a way to explain it away and defend Poles. In 1918, the Great War ends. Empires collapse. New Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Belarus, and Ukraine arise. And they immediately start killing their Jews, long before Nazis showed up to do it more efficiently. Between 1918 and 1920, according to conservative estimates, at least 300,000 Jews were murdered or died trying to escape pogroms by Ukrainian Petlura troops and Russian Denikin army in what is now Ukraine. And while the scale of Jewish blood released by Poles was much less than that, it was there in many places. Lviv, November 1918, hundreds killed. Pinsk, April 1919, 35 Jews machine-gunned by Polish troops during a charity meeting. Gendler, Lamazi, Brisk, Slonim, house-to-house killings, rape, looting, and dozens of smaller towns where Jews were beaten senselessly to mark the rebirth of free Poland. How do we know? The Morgenthau Commission report, the Jewish Telegraph Agency, the Inter-Allied Investigating Committee, the reports which Poland itself produced but then suppressed. Some presidential envoys, Morgenthau, Johnson, Captain Edgar Jedwin, tried desperately to document this truth, but American political machine responded by protecting Poles. The U.S. ambassador in Warsaw blamed Jewish agitators. American newspapers minimized the killings. Catholic organizations claimed the reports were exaggerated by Bolsheviks. And the Polish-American lobby demanded Washington to defend the honor of Poland. So once again, America chose a narrative The Poles are brave, noble, heroic. Jews were killed either by accident or they provoked it themselves. American defense of Poland was total. Why America chose the Polish narrative? Here are just some reasons. First, Polish vote. By 1920, Polish voters were a massive force. Chicago, Buffalo, Detroit, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Milwaukee, entire parishes, newspapers, trade unions, community halls were Polish. No American politician could win a statewide election in those states without Polish Catholic support. And Poles demanded one thing above all else: never accuse Poland of anti-Semitism. And America obeyed. Second reason was that besides ethnic Poles, there was also another great shield for Polish anti-Semitism, and that was the Catholic Church. In American Catholic imagination, Poland was holy martyr of Europe, Christ among the nations, Christus Narodov, pure, innocent, faithful, crucified either by Russia or Germany, depending on the situation. Polish pogroms shattered this romantic image, so Catholic newspapers simply refused to believe it. This was true in 1912, 1914, 1918, 1920, 1940, 1946, 1968, and it is still true today. Geopolitics played its role as well. Poland was part of Russia during World War I. Russia was American ally. After the war, Poland became the enemy of Bolshevik Russia, which America feared. Poland was needed as a military barrier, a Slavic ally, a European stabilizer. Labeling Poland anti-Semitic would weaken this barrier, so the truth was sacrificed to geopolitics. And American Jews were politically extremely cautious. Until late 1960s, Jewish leaders in America avoided a fight with the Catholic Church, especially over the innocence of Poland. Jewish organizations were still vulnerable, still feared increasing anti-Semitism, and still believed that it is better to preserve the relations than expose Polish crimes. So American Jews themselves tried to stay silent, like they continued to do it during the Holocaust. Of World War II. Fast forward to 1968, when Poland was part of the Soviet Union, in fact. That year, in 1968, the ruling Polish party launched a violent anti-Semitic purge. Jewish professors were fired, Jewish students expelled, Jewish officers removed from the army, Jews forced to sign documents renouncing Zionism, thousands expelled with the passport valid one way only. And what did America do? Once again, America defended the Poles. But now the excuse was different. This was not the Polish people. Blame Moscow, not Poland. The fact that they were defending communists did not bother American defenders of Poland. Never mind that the speeches, the slogans, the mobs screaming, Jede dosiono, kikes go back to Zion, were Polish, not Russian. In 1914, Poles were screaming, kikes go back to Palestine, to your Palestine. Never mind that Polish communist anti-Semitism was built on centuries of Catholic and nationalist anti-Semitism. America again shows the same narrative. Protect Poland from moral stain. The Continuum, World War I, 1919, World War II, 1968. We like to think of these as separate eras, but they're one unbroken story. 1912, Poles boycott Jewish stores. 1914, Russia kills tens of thousands of Jews with large-scale Polish participation. America defends Russia and Poland. 1918, 1920, Polish army kills Jews, America defends Poland. 1939, 1945, millions of Poles collaborate with Nazis that occupied Poland at that time. Pogroms later in Jedwabne, Kielce, and other Polish places without Nazis. America protects the Polish martyr narrative. 1968, communist anti-Semitic campaign instigated by the Soviet Union, America shields Warsaw. The pattern is astonishingly consistent. Whenever Jews accuse Poles, America protects Poles. Whenever Poles attack Jews, America finds some explanation. America, a nation that prides itself on moral clarity, looked at what is going on during Khurban and said, we see nothing. Why does America sees nothing? And what does it mean today? I'm having this conversation with you not only to remind you of what took place before, but also to make you understand that America's defense of Polish anti-Semitism poses a great threat not only to Jewish survival in this country, but to America itself. This is because it is directly connected to the rising Catholic anti-Semitism on the American right, the phenomenon which is a real poison growing poison in this country. If you look carefully at the people around Donald Trump, who are most aggressively anti-Jewish, you will come to the realization that a great many of them are Catholics, ex-Catholics, or drawn to Catholic traditionalist ideology. I'm not talking about ordinary American Catholics, most of whom do not share, so far, these views. I'm talking about a very specific Catholic or Catholic adjacent, hard right world that has moved from the margins to the center of MAGA politics. Nick Fuentes, Catholic integralist. Steve Bannon, traditional Catholic. Michael Flynn, Catholic, now mixing his Catholicism with QAnon. J.D. Vance, recent Catholic convert aligned with post-liberal Catholic thinkers. Tucker Carlson, not Catholic, but steeped in Catholic post-liberal ideology. And behind them, the intellectual architects, Patrick Deneen, Sahran Amari, Adrian Vermuelli, don't know if I pronounced their names correctly, and let's not forget the major think tank of the political right, the Heritage Foundation, which is now led by the Catholic extremist Kevin Roberts. This cluster is not random, and on top of it sits Rome, sits great friend of Hamas and Erdogan of Turkey, sits anti-Israeli Pope from Chicago. This collectivity reflects something deeper. Historical, theological, civilizational. Like Islam, Catholicism, especially in its traditional European form, never had the Protestant moment that evangelicals experienced, that moment of deep biblical identification with the Jewish people and the state of Israel. Evangelicals read the Hebrew Bible and see it as a living promise. Traditional Catholics don't even read it. They share the ideology of the Church, which, despite post-Holocaust declarations, and whose many members became what some would call modern Catholics, is committed to the Church's founding story of supersessionism, the story that they replaced Israel, that they're new Israel. So when they look at a strong, sovereign, armed Jewish state, something inside them, just like something inside Hamas members and Erdogan, rebels. For them, Israel is not a miracle, not a fulfillment, but major theological problem. This new Catholic post-liberal movement, the intellectual engine behind American Christian nationalism, wants to rebuild a hierarchical Christian order and create America infused with Christian authority, a world where liberal democracy gives way to a kind of Catholic-flavored strongman model. In that worldview, a proud, independent Jewish state does not fit. A Jewish homeland that stands on its own feet, that does not accept subordinate place, and that does not ask permission from either Istanbul or Rome, is something that mullahs, priests, and godless secular progressives instinctively want to minimize, contain, and delegitimize. And so their rhetoric creeps in. Israel is militaristic. Israel is ethno-nationalist. Israel controls American policy. Jews are cosmopolitans. And all of this suddenly becomes respectable again in certain MAGA circles. Trump was born in Presbyterian family. Presbyterian Church flipped from being pro-Israel to being now viciously anti-Israel. Trump says that he sees himself just as a good Christian, not really Presbyterian. And many things that he has done regarding the recognition of Jerusalem and Golan Heights deserve my applause. But the ideological machinery around him is increasingly extremist Catholic. They're the people writing his manifestos, shaping the political language, whispering in his ears and the ears of influencers. They come from a world where Jewish autonomy was never fully accepted, and Jewish sovereignty is resented. So when we see Trump inviting people like Fuentes to his home And when we hear him repeat conspiracies that echo old European anti Semitic themes, we're not just hearing Trump, we're hearing the voices behind him. And many of those voices come from a radicalized Catholic intellectual tradition that is deeply uncomfortable with Jewish power, Jewish survival, and especially Jewish independence. And this is something that Presbyterians need to remember too. If successful, these nationalist Catholics will not stop with Jews. They will go not only after us, Jews, or J.D. Vance's Indian wife, or radical Muslims, but also after their other natural enemies, the Protestants, especially evangelicals. Like before, America's defense of Polish anti Semites comes today from the same ground and allows these people to consolidate themselves. Where it all will lead America, I don't know. But another horrific civil war, now along religious and racial lines, is something that must be seriously considered as possible.